Hello, I'm James Wells, Education Manager at Crayola. We're excited to share this Art of Learning series with everyone who educates children. Art helps us to learn about all sorts of topics. Today, in celebration of Comic Book Day, we will be discussing comics. So gather some art supplies and get ready for an interactive hands-on learning session. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Gavin Aung Than, who is a cartoonist, author, and illustrator of the Super Sidekicks series. Welcome, Gavin.
Hi, James. It's really exciting to be here, and greetings all the way from Australia.
Awesome. So, Gavin, I'm so excited to get into our questions today. So, first off, comics have been around since the 1800s. Children's imaginations are inspired today, as they have been for many generations, by this illustrated literary genre. Please tell us how your love of comics started and how your childhood experiences with comics led to a career as a cartoonist and an author.
Yeah, I mean, I've loved comics as long as I can remember, James, and probably looking all the way back till I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I would kind of stay at my grandmother's house after school. She would babysit me, and I had an uncle who lived there, and he used to collect Mad magazine. So I don't know if younger students wouldn't know what Mad magazine is these days, but it was a very famous magazine full of comic art and full of wacky humor, cheeky jokes, and full of this gorgeous comics and, movie parodies. That's kind of where I first fell in love with comics. And then I kind of would read newspaper comics, like Garfield, Calvin and Hobbes, Zits. As I got older, I would move up onto the European comics. Asterix and Tintin were quite popular here. You can see a Tintin poster behind me. And then in my teenage years, I was kind of got hooked on Marvel and DC superhero stuff. And I was an avid comic collector in my teenage years. And yeah, I'd always just love looking at the artwork, and I would be amazed by how amazing the artwork was. And I would copy my favorite characters, draw characters like Wolverine and the X-Men, Batman. The Ninja Turtles were big. They're still popular today. They're still going strong. So yeah, that's kind of just where the initial love of cartooning came from. And all throughout school, high school, I was kind of always known as the guy who could draw. That's kind of what was my thing. I was the guy who could draw. My friends would ask me to draw characters for them, and I would always draw my books and on my folders. That's where the kind of initial, the dream came from, where maybe I thought maybe I could actually turn my passion for scribbling into a career as a cartoonist. So yeah, that's kind of where the dream started.
I have to say, so much of your story resonates with me and brings back such nostalgia because, I too am an artist. Cartoonists gain inspiration from their environment, history, and contemporary culture. Talk to us about how you started pairing quotes and comics that eventually evolved to your popular web series and later New York Times bestselling book, Zen Pencils.
For those of you who don't know, Zen Pencils was a webcomic I did where I took inspirational quotes and I turned them into comics. So it's kind of a long story. It all kind of was connected to what was happening in my life. So I was doing graphic design for a number of years. I wasn't really very happy at all. I was always still dreaming of being a cartoonist or doing something with my drawing. And yeah, by the time late 2011, I was reading a lot of kind of motivational stuff. I was trying to follow my own dreams, and I was reading a lot of inspirational biographies. And I would save some quotes that would motivate me to kind of keep going, keep pushing myself and not to give up on my dream. And this was all kind of in the heyday of Twitter and Facebook. And then it all kind of was in my head, and I was trying to think of a new webcomic idea. And it all kind of clicked one day. And I thought, what if I actually took the quotes that I had saved and I kind of used my artistic skills to turn them into like something someone would want to put on their wall. And then it kind of went a bit further. And I thought, what if I actually took those quotes and turned them into comics? And I could kind of combine my cartooning with my quotes, and I could share them. People could share them on Twitter and Facebook. And that's kind of when the light bulb went off over my head. And I kind of knew that was a pretty cool idea. I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I was so kind of confident in the idea. I decided to quit my job, take 6 months to kind of work on the website, to kind of build up an archive of comics that I could have ready to go. At the start of 2012, I launched Zen Pencils with a tagline of cartoon quotes from inspirational folks. It kind of worked out even better than I had dreamed of. It took off. It built quite a large following around the world. People would share them just as I planned all over the internet, all around the world. And I started getting this amazing feedback as well, because I shared my own story, why I was making this website, what the quotes meant to me, how I came up with a new story for each quote. And yeah, people just kind of really connected with it. I got some amazing feedback. People were saying that the comics had inspired them to kind of follow their own dreams, that my story kind of was motivating them to also, yeah, to chase their dreams. And eventually it got collected into a few books. That whole website was the reason I'm talking to you today. It kind of turned me from a hobbyist cartoonist into a professional cartoonist, and I still get to do it. Even though I've stopped Zen Pencils, I did that 6 years. It's 10 years later now, and I'm still managing to make a living as a cartoonist. So yeah, it was the kind of the best thing that I've ever done, really. And I'm still kind of amazed at how it all turned out.
That was amazing. And it's so great to hear how, one, you talk about your process in getting to eventually this coming together of your quotes and the comics. So that really speaks to the process that artists just have to work through in order for them to arrive at a great idea. But secondly, it's so inspiring to hear how your work impacted others. I think you just mentioned for many, it helped them to pursue their dreams and ambitions. So what an inspiring story. And I know this will impact many of our viewers. As with life, artists' ideas evolve. Their styles evolve, even their approaches. So comics are often humorous and lighthearted, but your comics also have hidden themes. You once said, "I specialize in adapting difficult and adult concepts into fun and relatable comics." Now, you also won the Environmental Award for Children's Literature in Australia for your book, Super Sidekicks, Ocean's Revenge. Why is it important for you to discuss important topics like caring for your environment through comics?
Just like any other medium, like film or writing or music or painting, they can kind of convey any message. You know, sometimes people kind of pigeonhole comics and think they're just for kids, or they're just meant to be funny, or they're just, you know, superhero stuff. So initially, yeah, I was kind of mainly focusing on inspirational messaging. But then over the years, a lot of Zen Pencils tackled various different themes. And then eventually when I moved, focused more on the children's graphic novels, which is what Super Sidekicks is. So yeah, Ocean's Revenge, which is here, book 2, Ocean's Revenge. So yeah, that kind of has an environmental message. So it just came about from me, like reading the news, following what's happening in the world. I read an article about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I'm sure some of you have heard of. It's basically a giant floating mass of plastic in the Pacific Ocean, which is as big as a small country. So I just read about that. And of course, it's horrible to read about that sort of thing. But then, you know, I didn't think anything of it. But when it was time to do book 2 in Super Sidekicks, I needed to think of a giant, you know, a villain that the Super Sidekicks could face. And I wanted to do like a kind of, you know, like a Godzilla giant creature attacking cities. And then the idea, you know, it was in my head about the plastic, and it all just, again, it all just kind of clicked. What if the giant creature was made out of plastic? And then, so that led to, how did that happen? And then that led to, what if the queen of the oceans was so angry with humans for what we have done to her oceans, that she uses her powers to kind of turn all the plastic into the oceans into this giant monster, and it's up to the Super Sidekicks to stop it. Just from reading, just from being engaged with important topics, as long as you can kind of hide the message in a very engaging, you know, action-packed story, then I think the readers will be okay with it.
I love your approach, your idea of having a nice balance of entertainment, but also educational for students. So now, for our young viewers that's watching, many of them may be listening to you and wondering how they can create their own comics. I know for me as a young budding artist, comics was really my first introduction into the art world. You know, looking at comics, they often consist of lines and shapes and colors and text. As a professional comic artist and illustrator, could you tell us about your creative process when illustrating your comics?
So I've got an example here from Super Sidekicks book 3, which is called Trial of Heroes. And so let's just take a page. So that's kind of what the final product looks like. And a lot of students, they think, that I just start drawing and it just looks like this. It comes out like that straight away. And they think, oh, Gavin's such a great drawer. I could never do what he does. Just unrealistic. I can never do that. But I just want to show you what that page starts off as. Okay, so they start off looking like this. So like scribbles. So you can see this is from the same book, the chapters. So that's what a page might look like. So I'll get the same page. So you can see they're just basically stick figures. I draw the entire book as stick figures first. So here's the same page. Page 101 there, this one. So you can see I've kind of got the speech balloons there. The important thing is, having the speech balloons in the right place so that the reader follows the story correctly and they don't get confused reading the wrong speech balloon in the wrong order. And the key here is just to kind of make the story as clear and easy to follow as possible. So that's the first stage. I do this for the entire book, almost 200 pages. And then I kind of get this stage approved by my editor just to make sure everything's working. The key is to kind of make the story easy to follow, not to make it confusing. And for me, this part is actually the hardest part of the whole process for me, because it's kind of like a maths problem. You're kind of figuring out which panel goes where, how many panels to put on a page, when to turn the page, to make sure that there's like an exciting reveal on the next page. So it's quite a difficult process. So that's how the comic book starts off. There's the next stage, what I call the penciling stage. So I'll get the same page here. So I just kind of pencil the pages very loosely, just using lead pencil on regular copy paper. So here, the main goal is just to get the poses done, to have the characters with a lot of energy, exciting. And again, you leave enough space for the speech balloons here. So that's the penciling stage. I do that for the entire book. And then the next stage is called the inks, or the inking stage. So it's basically, I'm just tracing over the pencils with pen. So this time I'm taking my time. I'm making sure the lines are all nice and perfect. The speech balloons, the text will be added on the computer later. So that's the inking stage. And this part probably takes the longest. That's done for the whole book. And I scan these pages into the computer and the color is added on the computer. For Super Sidekicks, I didn't have to do the colors. We had a magnificent colorist, Sarah Stern. She did all the color for the book. So that's one cool thing about comics, is also it's often quite a collaborative medium where you work with others to kind of bring a book to life. So that's a basic summary of the process, kind of like building a house. Those initial pages is kind of like the plans for the house. That's kind of the architect's plans. And then you build the house slowly. You kind of build up the frame. You put the frame together, and then you put all the walls and all the roof on, the finishing touches, and then you kind of put all the color and the paint and the fancy kitchen and the beautiful bathroom, and then you get a house.
That's such a great analogy. Thank you for that example and that insight. That's a lot of work to get from beginning to end. So for the viewers that's watching, that's interested in this, know that there's quite a process, and it's going to require some stick-with-itness as you develop your comics. So now, Gavin, you mentioned you want them very clear and concise, and we all have stories to tell, from our first bike ride to the first day of school. Comics depend on both text and images to convey a message to readers. What has been your approach to telling a compelling story to engage your readers?
Be clear and concise. The last thing you want your reader to do when reading your story is for them to kind of flip through the page and then kind of go, oh, wait a minute, I'm not sure what's happening here. For them to be pulled out of the story. You don't want that. That's why I do those initial very rough pages, is to just make sure the story flows. There's just enough information for the reader to figure out what's going on. You don't have to give them too much information. They can kind of figure out stuff in between the panels, but you just give them just enough to figure out what's happening. And yeah, like you said, it's a kind of a perfect marriage between text and images. So you can kind of work with your friend. They can draw the pictures, or you can write the story, or vice versa. It can be a collaborative medium. Or if you're like me and you like to be, a hermit and just stay at home and work away and write your stories and draw your own stories, you can do that too. So My approach is just to have fun, kind of convey and write and draw what kind of speaks to you. Take your time. It takes a lot of time and effort. Have a go, basically.
What I'm hearing is really lean into what inspires you, right? And you don't have to reveal everything at once. It can be done piece by piece. Thanks for those insights. Gavin, I know our viewing audience is eager to create along with you. Like many of our viewers, I remember some of my first drawings were cartoon characters, similar to the ones I saw in books and on TV shows. Can you show us how to create a character?
All right, James. Yes. So I'm going to show you how I draw my character from Super Sidekicks, JJ, Junior Justice. So he's the leader of the team here. I'm just going to start off just using a pencil. And so what I like to do is I just start off by using simple shapes, circles and rectangles. And I'll show you how I create JJ. So we just start off with a big circle for his head. So you can follow along with me if you have a piece of paper with you. So there's a circle. We're going to do a little rectangle here. And then there's just a bigger rectangle. So I'm just using very simple shapes, rectangle here. And on this side. So this is what I always do with my characters. I just start off very simple, just using shapes, 2 circles here. So you can see I've got a basic pose here for JJ. We're just going to do the top half of his body today. So this is kind of acts as my guide before I start drawing the actual drawing on it. So I'm going to move to his face. And what I always like to do is I draw these 2 lines, one vertical line and one horizontal line. And this will just help me place JJ's features of his face. So there's my guide. I've got that done in pencil. And that's what I always do. I can't just start drawing JJ's hair and his face and it look beautiful. I always have to have this kind of sketch underneath to help me with my drawing. So now what I can do is I'm happy with that. I can kind of add some of JJ's details now. So I'll just grab a marker and I've got my guide to help me. So now I can place JJ's face. So that horizontal line is where his eyes go. So that's right in the middle of the head. I'm just going to draw 2 circles on that line. So, his pupils. And then about halfway down, I can draw the end of his nose, which is just kind of like a flat V, like that. And then halfway down there, I can draw his mouth. So you can see how the guides, they all kind of help me place where all the features go. Your ears kind of roughly line up with the nose. So I can draw JJ's ears now. So each thing leads to the next thing. So I just draw his ears. And then I can kind of finish off JJ's head. Like so, and then we can move on to his hair. So if you haven't noticed, JJ is kind of loosely based on me. So he's got spiky hair. I've always wanted to be the leader of a superhero team. So that's the cool thing about making your own comics is you can put yourself into the stories. So we've got JJ's face and he's kind of got like a mask around his eyes like Batman. Sidekick, Robin. So we put the mask around his eyes like that. So now we can kind of move on to his body. So now we can just finish off his body. So this is just a quick version today. All right, so JJ's taking shape now. Like all superheroes, they've got a cool logo. JJ's got a cool logo on his chest. He's got a big upside down triangle like this. And he's got a symbol. It's actually 2 J's. So they go inside the triangle. They look a bit strange, these J's, but they kind of symbolize J's. I'll show you what I mean. So we've got, his name is Junior Justice. So those 2 J's go in there. And now, of course, superhero needs a cape. So we can draw his cape underneath his head like that. And you can just draw a cool cape kind of in the background. And there's just a quick JJ that I just wanted to show you how I create a character. We start off sketching lightly. Don't press too hard when you draw. Sketch lightly to begin with. Use simple shapes to get the pose correct. And then you can have fun and draw all the fun stuff on top of that sketch.
Gavin, I love the variety of expressions that you've created here with using simple lines by starting with basic shapes as well to help create the overall look and feel of JJ. So thank you so much for showing us your process in creating this character. Now, I wonder, what is JJ's story in this comic here? So could you show us how to create a short 3-panel comic strip featuring JJ?
What I've done, I've prepared this little template for us. I've just got a very simple scene for JJ that he is in the story or the script that you might get with a comic. So the writer will write a script and it's up to the artist to turn that into a comic. So the scene that we're going to work with is, we've got a very simple, fun scene. An evil robot attacks JJ and he karate kicks it into oblivion, making it crash into another robot. So now it's up to me as a comic book maker to break down the scene into panels. What I've done, I've broken it down into 3 panels. So in all stories, we have the setup, we have the conflict. So most stories revolve around the conflict. And then there's a resolution at the end. So you can do that for anything. So even a short scene like this. So for the setup, we're going to have an evil robot attacking JJ. So we draw that into the panel. Now remember, I just start off very lightly using sketches. So we've got JJ facing off against one of the evil robots that appear in my book, Super Sidekicks. You can see I'm just using simple shapes. And there's JJ here. He's looking at an evil robot. So one of these robots is gonna attack JJ. So these are the kind of the robot droids that appear in the comic series. And we can have the robot kind of saying something. Remember to leave space for your speech balloons because they're an important part of the comic. Sometimes you draw an image and you have got no space for the balloons and that kind of doesn't work. So I've got a very rough action here. And then we've got the conflict. And the conflict in this scene is JJ karate kicks the robot into oblivion. So I'll just draw a very quick karate kick. So we've got, again, I use just shapes for the body. And that's his foot going up. And that's his hand. So JJ's karate kicking. Now we can have a little cool explosion with his kick. And all we need is just the robot's hand flying off the page to know that he's been kicked into oblivion here. So that's his hand. And you can have some debris, like some of the metal from the robot flying off. And JJ can be saying something heroic here later. So there's the conflict, the flying kick, and then the resolution. So what happens after that? So the robot crashes into another robot. So we can just draw that. We've got a robot crashing into another robot here. So this is how I kind of break down all the scenes in the story. You kind of choose the 3 or the most important moments that you want to depict the action with, and the most essential moments in the story to draw. So he's crashing into another robot, and he can be saying something funny here later on. We can figure that out later. So we've got a basic of the comic, the setup, the conflict, the resolution. So I'm just going to quickly draw in the details now with the pen. So I'll just quickly draw, let's see, JJ. So after this is done, I'd like you to create your own character. Think of a scene for them. And then I want you to break down that scene into 3 panels. And then I want you to draw the 3 most important parts of that scene. So here's JJ. Got his cape. Now it doesn't have to be an action or superhero thing. It can be a humor gag. It can be, setup, conflict, and then punchline, like a funny punchline. Or it can be a romantic story, a love story. It can be a horror story. It can be anything you can think of. Like I said, comics can be used to convey any story. So again, I'm just doing this pretty rough. So the robot's flying in, they can be saying something. So I'll just draw JJ doing a karate kick here. So so you can have like a cool bit of explosion. So again, you just have to show the hand of the robot flying off the panel, and the reader can figure out what's happening. So you can just say, hey, yeah. And then, so that's his flying kick, that's the action. And then the result of the action is the robot crashing into another robot. So this is just a fun example, a fun exercise that you can do to start making comics. And then, once you're happy with doing 3 panels, you can do 5 panels, 6 panels, you can do a few pages. So you can just write longer and longer scenes. Now the key is always to make it clear what's happening in the page. See how it's all going in the same direction. The robot's coming this direction, JJ kicks it back that direction, the robot flies back up in this direction. So I wouldn't have him kicking the robot up here, and then in this panel, the robot's coming up this way, because that's just confusing to the reader. So always remember to have the direction be constant and consistent and not to confuse the reader. So if this was a real comic, I would kind of rub out all the pencil underneath, and then I could add some color. So there's a very simple 3-panel comic.
Wow, Gavin, you've broken down the various aspects of the story with the setup, the conflict, and the resolution, which for many educators and parents working with their young children, this is the perfect way to build out a story. So thank you for hitting those key elements of story building, storytelling, as well as the insights that you provided. Something as simple as making sure the character is going in the same direction with each panel to create that consistency. So again, appreciate the insight. While viewers are finishing up their creations, I have a special message for teachers and parents. Keep learning fun and colorful by signing up to receive the Crayola Education free monthly e-newsletters. You'll get updates about all of our programs, including the Art of Learning, delivered right to your email box. After this session, you will have plenty of time to finish your comic. Please share the photos in the comment sections of this video. We look forward to seeing what you create. Gavin, thank you so much for inspiring us today. I'm sure our viewers are excited to follow your work for more ideas and resources. How can they stay in touch with you?
So the best place to find me is through my website, which is my surname, aungthan.com. So that's where I've got all my latest news. And there's also a contact form there. If you're watching this and you want to send me what you've been working on, or your comics, you can find me and contact me through my website. I'm also on Instagram. My handle is @Zen Pencils. That's where I post mainly a lot of my artwork and my process as well. So those are the 2 places you can find me. Also, all the Zen Pencils comics that I've done over the years, they're all available online for free to read at zenpencils.com. So that's a great place for teachers to go if they want to share some of the comics with the students.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those ways to be in touch. And I really appreciate you encouraging our young artists to share their creations with you. So Gavin, we have a saying at Crayola: when something is created, something bigger happens. As a child, I often created, which led to something much bigger, having a career in the arts. What advice do you have for young artists who are interested in creating and sharing their stories through comics?
Some advice I would probably give you is just to start off small. So I just showed you just before like a 3-panel comic. So I would start off with those, create a character like I've created, and then put them in a small scene like I showed you how to do, just in 3 panels. So start doing that first. Once you get the hang of that, move on to 6 panels, and then move on to 2 pages, add another character in there, and then slowly work your way up. So I wouldn't recommend starting off and going, oh, I've got this amazing idea for a 100-page super graphic novel that's going to be the best thing ever. And then you start working on that. And by the time you get to page 7, you might go, oh, this is a lot of work. I don't really feel like doing another 90 pages of this. And then you kind of get discouraged and you don't finish. While it's important to start your comics, it's even more important to finish your comics. So start off small, give yourself small little challenges that you know that you can finish, and then build your reps. And the more reps you do, the better you get. There are no shortcuts. There are no hacks for you to get better faster. It just takes a lot of practice and a lot of repetition. And another thing I recommend is you don't really need fancy equipment. Just use your life as inspiration. Start small. And of course, my best piece of advice is just to have fun with it.
Gavin, thank you for all of these inspiring messages and advice, and thank you for joining us today. And we also want to thank all of you for joining us for this Art of Learning event. Remember, we all have a story to tell, so grab your favorite art tools and start creating little comics with big messages.
Thanks for joining in this Art of Learning session. I was so excited to be part of it. Thank you to Crayola for having me. Have fun with the comics. Contact me through my website if you want to share your comics with me, and I'll see you later. Thank you.
Bye-bye.